In July 2nd, Ukraine Media Center starts its operation. My name is Svetlana Cheparenko, and now we're talking about the withdrawal of Ukraine from Ottawa Convention and conscription rules for the males of 18 to 24 years old. And joining us in the studio is Fedir Venislavskyi, member of the Parliament, member of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. Mr. Fedir, good morning. Good morning. So, withdrawal of Ukraine from Ottawa Convention. Can you please explain why is it important and why did Ukraine decide to reject the ban on landmines? Well, the Ottawa Convention really prohibits manufacturing, collection, accumulation, transfer, and use of the landmines, anti-infantry landmines. The convention was signed more than 100 states, more than 100 countries, 130 countries. It was signed to minimize the risks for the health and life during the hostilities, because the anti-infantry landmines are aimed at damaging the personnel. Ukraine signed that convention and ratified it back in 2005. However, with the beginning of the war in 2014, and specifically after the beginning of the full-scale invasion in 2022, it became obvious that the Russian Federation, which had not signed the convention and respectively hadn't undertaken any obligations, was using anti-infantry landmines en masse that resulted in heavy damage and injuries of our personnel. So I think that withdrawal from such obligations contemplated by the conventions is an over-mature resolution for Ukraine. It should have been adopted in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, under the influence of the hostilities and the nature of the hostilities in Ukraine. Many countries reviewed their attitude to this convention. For example, the Baltic countries have withdrawn from the convention along with Poland. And at the level of our committee, there were discussions within a couple of months about the necessity to adopt relevant resolution in Ukraine. There was a decision made by the National Security and Defense Council, and President Zelensky affected this resolution by his decision. There was a small nuance related to the procedure of legal termination of this document, because for the depository of the United Nations, the country who want to withdraw from the convention have to declare such intention 6 months before, and after the expiration of the 6-month term, their obligations cease. And another moment that was discussed at the political level, the same convention, the rules of which regulate the procedure for withdrawal, they contemplate that if the country declares about their withdrawal from the convention and they were involved in an armed conflict, the withdrawal ends until the end of the armed conflict. But Ukraine was involved in armed conflict before. So the limitations contemplated by the convention in this part, they are subject to discussion, I think, and Ukraine has to be deprived of those limitations regarding the use of the anti-infantry landmines, because anti-infantry landmines are a part of any engineer fortifications that impede the progress of the enemy. They have a serious military and psychological effect. The resolution was supported by all of the members of the committee. The convention was ratified back in 2005 by Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, and withdrawal should also be voted for by Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. I think that decision of the president will be soon formalized by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, and relevant draft law about denouncement of Ottawa Convention will be announced soon. I think that Ukraine will be able to arrange the manufacturing of the anti-infantry landmines itself to prevent the enemy from significant offensive operations. And also, Ukraine may get mines from those countries that were never signatories of such convention, buying those landmines. So from the perspective of intensifying of our defense capabilities, this resolution should have been adopted even earlier. Well, in view of the nuances that you've mentioned about 6 months, this intermediary period, so when Ukraine will be legally capable of using those landmines if the withdrawal will be ratified shortly. So I think that if the president issued the order to effect the resolution of the National Security and Defense Council for the General Secretary of the United Nations, who is the depository of the convention, I think that after expiration of the 6-month period, Ukraine will be already capable of using the landmines. Back in 2005, the Parliament made the resolution to destroy the anti-infantry landmines preserved in Ukraine, but due to the lack of financial resources in the state, part of those anti-infantry landmines, the cluster anti-infantry landmines, are still preserved at the storages in Ukraine. So I think that after the expiration of the convention, we will be able to use them in engineering fortifications that will prevent the enemy from progressing in Ukrainian territory. You've said that this resolution should have been adopted earlier because the war, the intense part of the war, is going on for almost 4 years. So why wasn't this resolution made earlier? Well, the discussions were underway until the last moment because Ukraine is a country that demonstrates their European civilization way, that complies with European international documents that are aiming at minimizing any damage to the life and health of the personnel. You know, this convention was signed by more than 130 countries, Ukraine among them, but in the view of the fact that Ukraine is using those capabilities in mass, I think that that was the right thing to do to adopt this resolution. I think that this civilizational choice and principles that Ukraine complies with were subject to discussion and were never letting us, just like I said, for more than 3 months, even 4 months, we had discussions in the committee. We were reporting to the government, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with relevant applications. It was a difficult discussion, but the perspective was that the priority is to save our country, save our sovereignty, and after the war, we'll see which conventions limiting the use of the conventional arms are worth signing, which are not. I mean, Ukraine is not going anywhere from Russian Federation. We have more than 2,000 kilometers of common border, and that border should be protected. Thank you. So let's talk about the mobilization. Starting from the 1st of July, the rules of deferment for the males of 18 to 24 years are changing. So can you please give us more color on that? Well, the law on mobilization contemplates that the males aged under 25 years will not be conscripted for military service. There are certain limitations. We can talk here about the citizens of Ukraine aged under 25 years. But for that category of males, we've made a contract, so there is no mobilization, there is no conscription of the males under 25 years. The Verkhovna Rada didn't adopt any changes in this regard. Well, there was an information that there is initiative to prohibit the males after 25 years to get professional education, to enter the higher educational institutions. Can you please comment on this? Well, I cannot give you any details. I haven't seen any relevant draft legislation that would restrict any such rights. Any restrictions to the right to education, you know, they will contradict the Constitution. But this idea, I know it came up from the beginning of the full-scale invasion, because the right to education transformed into a right to abuse it, to get a deferment, as we were discussing before. In the years 22 and 23, the number of students or the number of applicants aged 30 to 50 plus increased significantly. Also, the number of those increased significantly who wanted to get second higher education on commercial basis. So the relevant resolutions were made in order to prevent any abuse of such rights. Professional technical education is a level of education that contemplates the right to deferment from conscription. So we have to approach this thinned rationally in order not to restrict the right of Ukrainian citizens to education. So the number of applicants, the number of students has significantly grown with the beginning of the war. So those weights and balances that prevented any abuse, they should exist. But honestly, I haven't seen any draft legislation in this regard, so it's difficult for me to comment anything like this. Yesterday, there was a scandal spread over media about Lviv regional administration that coordinated the leave for the males abroad, according to the letters of an international humanitarian organization. So how do such machinations become possible during the year 4 of the war? Well, unfortunately, when the war is going on, when there is a process of mobilization, significant number of citizens try to avoid conscription. That's a natural fear, to be injured, to be killed. And people try to find different loopholes in law, maybe semi-legal. It may become possible because of the abuses of some local government officials, and I think it's the responsibility of law enforcement to respond to such abuses. From the perspective of the legislation, it's difficult to contemplate anything like this because the citizens may always find some loopholes, where the abuse of the position by the officials may become possible. I think that, again, it's a responsibility of law enforcement. Those guilty should be brought to liability so that they don't connive others in their attempt to avoid or evade military service. Again, such restriction of movement was imposed from the very first days of the war. I mean, the prohibition for the males of conscription age to leave the country is contemplated by both Ukrainian and international legislation. But when it comes to criminal infringements, when some counterfeit documents are being used or other illegal mechanisms, such mechanisms should get a reaction of law enforcement, because law enforcement agencies are numerous in Ukraine, and they have, again, deferment from the military service, and they should comply with their obligations. Thank you, dear guests. Do we have any questions from the floor? Alina Burseva, Suspilny News. In the White House, they confirmed that the White House suspends supplies of ammunition to Ukraine. Can you please tell us how this resolution by the United States reflect on the defense capabilities of Ukraine? Well, any resolution of our partners to suspend the supplies of different weapons to Ukraine, including such type of weapons which are unique that other countries, apart from the United States, don't manufacture, for example, rockets to the Patriot air defense systems, is something that no one can supply to Ukraine, so it's painful for us. I mean, given the terroristic attacks, the combined strikes using drones and missiles that Russia exercises against Ukraine, against the Ukrainian citizens who get killed every day. Well, it's an unpleasant situation, and I think that our diplomats and the office of the president, including the president himself, will enter in negotiations with our American partners, and I hope the situation will be rectified shortly. I think it's worth mentioning that for me personally, as a representative of Parliamentary Committee on Security, Intelligence and Defense, I mean, I cannot understand why the restriction on supply of the 155 millimeters ammunition, because I know for sure that since the beginning of the war, there were new manufacturing facilities opened in the United States to manufacture this type of ammunition, and to say that supplies to Ukraine will somehow restrict the defense capabilities of the United States, well, it's a little bit too conditional, and it's not in line with the reality. So I think that those rockets that were mentioned in the press release of the White House, AIM rockets, air-to-air class missiles, I think that they are almost unused by the United States. Both AIM-9 and AIM-120, which proved to be very efficient in Ukrainian developments, thanks to which we destroyed the aerial targets of the enemy. So again, this resolution was a little bit surprising from the point of view of official documents. So we need to see the document, the official document, which outlines the restrictions. I think that this matter should be rectified shortly by our diplomats and the presidential office. Talking about the supplies of air defense missiles and other ammunition, what are the other places Ukraine may take the ammunition from? Can other partners help?
Well, as I said, missiles for Patriots are unique, and only the United States of America produces them. So, transfer of such means of such arms demands cooperation of the country producer. So if there are other countries that are capable of producing these missiles, then of course Ukraine has the opportunity to try and discuss the possibilities of their delivery as well. But let's, of course, as I said, let's wait for the official announcement of this piece of news, of this information. However, I must say that we are constantly working on everything that is concerning the defense of Ukraine. Thank you very much, sir. We were talking. Are there any more questions? I would like to ask about the Ottawa Convention. Maxim Gunter. I would like to ask about the Ottawa Convention. How many mines were there left from the Soviet Union as a legacy? Well, Ukraine, as a portion of its obligation due to anti-landmine convention, destroyed portion of its stock. However, there's a certain amount left. However, a certain number of landmines left, but this information is, of course, classified. In terms of production, I'm sorry, let's. Will it be necessary to amend the Ukrainian legislation after it quits the Ottawa Convention? So it could be capable of producing the landmines? No, it's just denunciation of the convention is enough. We don't need any other legislation for that. And I will tell you even more. The production capabilities are being wound up right now. So is it going to be like drones? Will the landmines produced by Ukrainian industry, or will we be relying on the import from other countries? And if it is so, then who would be our partners or countries that we will be addressing to? Well, I think if you remember when Ukraine deployed drone production in a very rapid manner, I'm pretty sure that our private sector company, our private business, our middle class, they will find the way to create a production chains pretty fast. They will react really fast, and if we're talking about the Ottawa Convention, we need to remember that there is a lot of other countries that have not signed this, including India and Pakistan, and so on and so on. So there are countries that are not a part of this convention. So there is enough capabilities for cooperation. And the last question, all the combat is conducted mainly on the territory of Ukraine. So it means that we will have to install those mines on on our territory. How difficult is it to make such a decision? How difficult was it to make such a decision? Well, anyway, any combat right now is going to be conducted on the territory of Ukraine because this is the nature of this conflict, and we, for the way that they are going to be installed, they're going to be installed in accordance with all the international norms. We will have the map. We will have the maps of landmines, and after there is no necessity for them, they will be dismantled. So I don't see any great risk about the contamination of the territory of Ukraine by the landmines, and the armament itself has shown its efficiency in terms of stopping the enemy from attacking from the offensive actions. So interim installation, temporary installation of those landmines is fine. It will be dealt with afterwards. Thank you very much. I will remind you that it was representative of the defense, a member of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. Thank you for your attention. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.